Welcome to Fun and Fundraising, everybody, the podcast where we talk with people behind top events to showcase how they positively transform the communities they serve. I'm your host, Rob Giardinelli, and today I'm really thrilled to have a very special guest on. We have my friend Kimberly Schlegel Whitman, and she is the founder of Trunk Curated. And Kimberly is one of the very best entertainers I have ever met. She has done everything from leading small, intimate dinner parties for eight all the way to chairing galas for 1,000 or more. And she really understands what it takes to allow guests to connect through the art of entertaining. And we're just so fortunate to have her wealth of knowledge today. And with that, Kimberly, welcome. And I'm so thrilled we're able to do this.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. What a sweet introduction. I just love getting to work on events that make people smile and at the same time, bring some joy and help and aid to the communities that we all love so much. So that was so sweet of you to say those things, and I hope I live up to your introduction today.
I am absolutely sure you will. But before we dive into all of that, I want to hear where your passion and your interest for entertaining comes from, because it really is your personal ethos and your personal brand in so many ways.
Well, I mean, it certainly comes from my parents. I just grew up in a home where my parents loved to entertain. They loved gatherings, whether it was just our family and, a couple of friends or, a huge big event. And our home was constantly buzzing with celebrations. And I just kind of recognized quite young that I really got a kick out of that. I liked that energy and I found it sort of, contagious to find joy in that. My parents really, it was something that they loved to put time in. And my parents are also very passionate about philanthropy and giving back, whether when we were children, whether that was with volunteer hours or tithing at church, a small percentage of what we were given, or whether it was like a grand, big, fundraising event that we got to spend time on. So they really instilled that in us when we were very young. And I recognized at a young age, as did my siblings, how fulfilling all of that was.
That's amazing. Now, was there ever a point that you were like, okay, I love this, but I love this so much that I want to make a career out of it?
Yes. So I thought after I graduated from SMU and I moved to New York and I was in a connoisseurship program at Christie's, an education program. And I thought that I was going to work in the art market and I love to research. So I thought this is just up my alley. I love the arts and I love researching, and this combines all of my favorite things. And at the same time, I was making my debut in Dallas as an Idlewild debutante and planning what we call our special party. And I just loved that. We were working with a wonderful event planner called Tom Addis, and he filled me in on everything that he was doing and let me be a part of it. And he really, empowered me to figure out what I liked when it came to entertaining, at the age of 21 and 22, and made me feel like my opinion on all of it meant something. And so he was really a great encourager and kind of helped instill that in me. And what happened was when we were planning the event, I was in New York. So I was looking at party rentals in New York, and they were um, interesting and of very high quality. And you could get colorful things that were really well made. Where in Dallas at the time, the only thing that was really offered was sort of the standard, slightly more industrial. I don't want to say industrial, that's maybe not fair, but there weren't a lot of the more stylish options. So my mother and I looked into bringing these beautiful rental options from either New York or DC to Dallas for my special party. But by the time you paid for the rentals and you did the shipment or trucking of all of these things in, it made more sense to buy it. If you were going to do that two times, you might as well purchase it. And my mother had the room to store it. So that's what we did. And then my mother's friends started saying, "Can we borrow that?" And I had this kind of like, Oprah talks about those aha moments. I had one of those moments when my mother was getting something down and handing it to me. And she kind of said, as a joke, "We should be charging for this." And I was like, we should. And I started a party rental business, literally renting my mother's things to her friends. And I reflect on that now and I think to myself, how amazing it was that these women that I had known, many of them since I was a child, and how amazing it was that they indulged me and encouraged me and supported me as a young woman trying to set up this party rental business. And it's just really cool when I look back on it. At the time, I don't think I appreciated the faith that they were putting in me as I got this started. And it really means a lot to me now as I look back on it.
That's amazing. And that's such an interesting start that, you were in a different city, you were in a different, really, arena and realm. So
Yes.
talk a little bit about how you got from there to the point where you've launched, Trunk Curated, your new brand.
Yes, well, I started my party rental company. I ended up moving back to Dallas to be able to support that. At the same time, I bought the RSVP social calendar, which was a calendar of charity events that had been published in Dallas for almost 100 years at the time. And this was in 1998. 99, 2000, something like that. And people were just starting to build more elaborate interactive websites and things like that. And my father encouraged me to take the RSVP calendar from a published quarterly, mailed out, snail mail newsletter to a website. And that was a really, really exciting project for me. But it ended up being so interesting because I learned so much about all the charitable things that were happening in town. And it was a real education for me in that regard too. So I still operate that website, and I get to list all these charity events that are happening, and it's really, really exciting. And Rob, I started telling you that story, and now I can't even remember what the question was that you
How
asked
you got the
me
trunk
because
how you got the trunk curated from
I
there.
got, oh, thank you. Thank you. Okay. So that is, what happens when you're on overload, I think, right? Doing too many things. But anyway, I did that. A few years after that, I thought I would really like to write a book one day. My mother's friend had written 11 books on interior design at the time. So my mother encouraged me to take her to lunch, and her name is Betty Lou Phillips. And she took me to lunch and she told me everything that it takes to write a book. This is before digital photography. So it's collecting the film and collecting the stories and all of these things. But she said, "What are you waiting for? Why don't you do it now?" She connected me to her publisher. And within weeks, I had a deal to publish my first book on parties. So this all happened for me so quickly. Then I met my now husband. We got married. And together, he helped me sell my party rental business because I was so enjoying writing books and promoting the books and that kind of thing. So we sold it to one of our biggest customers. And then I was very focused on writing books and that kind of thing, raising my family for many years. And then a couple of years ago, I just decided that I wanted to be able to curate tables um, in a retail kind of setting so that it was easier for someone who wanted to put a table together to see a multi-branded table. So instead of, going to a website for China, a section of a website for China or a section of a website for linens, that kind of thing, I photograph these tables in multi-brands. So you might have a Heron plate and a Waterford glass and Christoph silver and that kind of thing, all mixed together, but styled in a way that's very easy for the customer to see how it's all going to look online. So we were doing these virtual tabletop trunk shows and offering all these things, and it turned into Trunk Curated and .com, and it's so much fun. And now, in addition to that, we're partnering with this wonderful mahjong studio that opened in Dallas. It's called the Charleston Club, and we're doing in-person trunk shows with a lot of my favorite brands, multi-brand at the same time, so you can come in and play with tabletop from one line and another line. And then maybe there'll be a clothing designer and buy a dress to wear to the event at the same time. So we try to make it really easy for the client that they can just come in and order really special things. Some of the trunk shows you even leave with your special things. And we just try to make it easy and fun and interactive and style, take the guesswork out of all of it.
Well, that's amazing. And I'm glad you brought up the point of, that people can mix and match with certain brands to put together a table. Because I think there's kind of this misnomer out there, even though I think most sophisticated party hosts like yourself don't do it. But there's the kind of monochromatic, I got to do one brand. Talk about why it's important to integrate multiple brands into a table to kind of create something that's uniquely them and showcases the personality of them, the table, the event.
Well, what I've really learned in working with clients, whether we were writing the book and visiting with people or people were shopping with me, it's very confusing and overwhelming when you see everything. So sometimes it's just the easiest thing to do to just get like one line of everything and be done with it, or stick with white and gold and not be worried about it. But people get nervous about, there's something about entertaining that feels like a little bit intimidating, like you can't make a mistake, like you can't get it wrong. And so my goal really is to make people comfortable with trying new things and thinking outside of the box and not being afraid to just kind of just try it, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And I found that the table was a really great place for me to kind of exercise my, it was a creative outlet. I got to play. And if I put a tablecloth down and then a plate on top of it and it didn't end up working out the way I wanted it to, all you have to do is take the plate off. There's no, you know, if you're painting, there's no worrying about painting over, or if you're a sculpture and you to put too much away on your sculpture, you didn't have to worry about making those mistakes. It's just so easy to play on a table. So I find it like I just am always encouraging people to use it as a place to experiment and play and get creative and have fun.
Very,
Also, everything works better in candlelight. So, like, if you're doing a dinner and it didn't work during the day, you just dim the lights and light some candles, and it's all going to work together. And everyone's going to feel good in your candlelight.
I was going to say there's something about candlelight that just makes everything feel elevated.
Yeah.
And, you could buy, I'm not saying you could literally buy stuff from the dollar store and no one notice,
Well,
but
sometimes I do. Like, it's so much
yeah.
fun to find something on your grocery run, or, a lot of times I use flowers from Trader Joe's or from the supermarket or whatever if I find something that I like. So, I mean, you're right. Candlelight is magical that way, because the minute you dim the lights, you can have that, $2 fun accessory in the middle that, starts conversation and that kind of thing
And that everyone loves. And,
that
you know,
everybody loves. It's usually often the highlight of the whole thing.
that just goes to show it doesn't have to be expensive to be good or to be fun or to make an event memorable.
Absolutely. That's so true. Yes. Yeah.
And you were being a little modest with your books here because you've written 11, 12
No, no,
books?
no. Thank you. No, 9. I knew I
9.
wouldn't live up to your introduction. I've done 9 books on entertaining. I'm working on number 10, so I'm super excited about it.
Oh, I can't wait to hear about it. I know you can't divulge it now, but I want you to talk about book number 9, because we talk about on this program quite a bit about that there's really 3 elements to any successful event. There's wow, there's fun, and there's heart. And your book, A Loving Table, literally, is about the heart. So talk a little bit about that book and how love inspires great memories that people can take with them long after an event ends.
Well, I love the idea of keeping those 3 things in mind when you're hosting. I mean, it's really, regardless of the size of your event, those 3 things are the most important part. And this book is called A Loving Table. It is all about taking the traditions that you have in entertaining. Maybe you learned them from your mother, your grandmother, a neighbor, wherever they came from. Maybe you started them, but taking those things that are meaningful to you and using them in your modern entertaining. So sometimes you're not using them the same way they were used when you were growing up, or the same way that your grandmother did it, but you're using it in a way that reflects the meaning of what they were doing. And so that's what the book is about. There are 36 different women from all around the world profiled in the book, and they all share beautiful images of their events that are special to them. And then they also share a story about why they were meaningful. And I wrote each of the stories in the book. I do have a co-author on the book, Shelley Johnstone, who is amazing. She's an interior designer out of Lake Forest, and she's fabulous. But one of my roles or one of my jobs was to interview each of the ladies that contributed and tell and write their story. And it was so much fun for me. It was like so inspiring. And I got to really, put thought into what was meaningful about these things and get on phone interviews with these ladies. And just we had wonderful conversations, and it really enriched my life. Writing that book was really a gift.
That's amazing. Now, you mentioned, they were all around the world. Was there like a through line that like each of those hosts kind of had in common? Is there kind of like one thing that they were like, okay, that makes for a great table or that makes for a great event?
Well, the thing that I found that they all had was that they learned how to find joy in entertaining, which is something that so often people miss. They get so caught up in the stress of, who's going to sit where can be stressful, or what food are we going to serve, or is red wine going to spill? All of those things. It's very easy when you're hosting to get caught up in the stressful parts, but all of those women knew that the more often you do something, the easier it becomes. And they learn to focus almost entirely on the joyful elements of it, and to really recognize that mistakes will happen when you're entertaining, and it's the way that you respond to them that people will remember. So to go in with the right mindset, to go in with the right heart is really what makes a hostess successful.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you mentioned the part that, because people are like, well, what happens if I do something bad at an event? And I tell people all the time, joke about it, laugh about it, and move on, because the more you dwell on it, the worse it is going to get, because there's so many moving parts in the event that people forget it often, most of the time, 20 seconds later.
Absolutely. There's that famous quote that I absolutely love that says, I wish I could remember who to credit it to, but it says, people don't really remember what you say, they remember how you made them feel. And I think this so true when you're entertaining. Like when something goes wrong, and it will, people are going to remember how you made everybody feel when that mistake happened. Like, did you dwell on it? Were you stressed? Did your stress, was it contagious to everybody else around the party? That kind of thing. It's just so important to remember why we're really there. And it's to celebrate. In many cases, it's to honor someone, to raise money for a wonderful cause, all of those things. So the goal is to give your guests the gift of a great time and a meaningful and memorable experience. And so the way you respond to everything that's happening is really what's going to make that experience for them.
Amen. And
I mean to
absolute.
simplify it. I don't mean to simplify it. There is a lot that goes into planning an event. So I don't mean to discount all of the attention to detail that I love and that people do appreciate, but really it boils down to that, how you made them feel.
Absolutely. Feeling is everything, and what they take with them and the positiveness that comes with it. That's
Yeah.
what they want to remember forever. So that the next time you invite them, they say yes and don't come up with some lame excuse as to why they can't
Right,
go.
right. I have to wash my hair that night.
That what is as old as time. It lasted, it was around 100 years ago. It'll be around 100 years
Yes,
from now.
that's right. That's right.
Now, you were talking about reaction, but there's the other part is approaching. And you were talking about different types of events. So talk about how you should approach entertaining in a large group format, which would be a gala or a wedding perhaps, versus a smaller event that might be like a dinner party or a major donor dinner or any of those sorts of things.
Well, I think that even when you're doing these huge things, details are still important and really important. And so I think a lot of times people think, oh, there are going to be 1,000 people at that. So I'm not going to worry about this or that or the other that you might take into account at home if you were having a small dinner party. But those details are still really, really important um, and worth putting time into, whether it's, the table chart instead of the seating chart, or the height of the centerpieces, or the temperature of the room, or the lighting in the room, or the place cards. I mean, these are all things that impact your guests and things to think about. At a larger event, of course, you're also thinking about, your sound system, and is it too loud or is it too quiet? I mean, I was just having a conversation with someone the other day about being at an event where it was absolutely freezing in the room. The air conditioning was just way, way, way too high, and everyone in there was frigid, and the only thing people talk about that event a year later is how cold they were. They forget why we were there, what we were raising money for, what we ate, who spoke, or whatever. I mean, they just remember how cold they were. And so it goes back to how people feel. So the detail of like, what will the temperature be in the room? What will the sound system be like? How long are people speaking? All of those things, those details are just so incredibly important when you're doing a big fundraiser for 1,000 or something like that.
Absolutely. And then with smaller event, with smaller events, if the music's too loud, you
You
just
turn
press
it
the
down.
button and you turn
Yeah.
it down, and it's real easy. So
Yeah.
it's scale, people. It's scale.
That's exactly right. But, another really important thing when you're doing those enormous events is to not try to do it by yourself. So whether you have an amazing team of professionals that work for the nonprofit that are helping you, or an incredible group of volunteers, you have to relinquish some control, and that's hard for someone like me. But you really have to make sure that you trust the people that you're working with, that they'll do their part too, because you can't get it all.
Absolutely true. And one of our very first guests on this podcast was Lisa Cooley, and
Oh,
she
good.
said it takes a village, and
Good.
that's
Right.
absolutely true.
Well, she knows how to do it. She's amazing.
She is, and I've seen her do many things at events. I'm just like, wow, that's next level. And I want to kind of transition to theming because that's, talk a little bit about how you do that in a way that is elegant, that it doesn't go over the top into, for lack of a better word, parody.
Yes. I'm so glad you asked about this. It's something that I've been thinking about a lot lately for some reason. I don't know if it's my age or what, but I look back on some things that I did in the past and I think, oh, I can't believe I did that silly. I took that theme way too far. Or, it lost being beautiful or attractive or whatever. I made the mistake of taking the theme so far that I forgot about how it would make my guests feel. And so, or I forgot that I just wanted it to be pretty. So, of course, I love a theme, but I think it has to be somehow in moderation, if that makes sense. So, I love a theme. I really do. I don't mean to discount a theme. I actually think a theme is helpful because it helps you make choices. There are so many options for things out there. But within that theme, I personally want things to continue to be appealing to all the senses. So, I'm not much of a tailgater personally, but when we're watching a football game or whatever, I remember I used to think it was fun to like put turf down as a tablecloth. And now I look back on that and I'm like, well, that doesn't feel good or look nice or make the food look attractive? And I mean, this is another silly, no, I don't mean to call anyone out who likes these things. I totally like love for everyone to do what suits them. But I always think it's funny when these elaborate or amazing cakes are made of something that looks like savory, even though they're eating something sweet. I know that's a bizarre thing, but like, or it looks like an animal and it's not like super attractive. I don't know.
Well,
Anyway,
the
it's
sweet
one
the,
of
the
my
sweet and
little pet
savory thing, like
peeves.
when you mentioned that, I immediately thought of that Thanksgiving episode of Friends where Rachel made the trifold with like the
Yes,
shepherd's pie in the middle.
because she accidentally got the 2 pages of the recipe book stuck together. It's so cute. I love that. Yes, but I mean, I just am at a stage where my goal, like over theme, my goal is to make it soothing and attractive and comfortable, if that makes sense.
That makes total sense. And people ask me about themes all the time, and I always say a themed event should allow people who want to fully embrace it to fully embrace it, but also people who just want to do a really subtle nod, which could be as simple as someone wearing a scarf or a pocket square with the theme color, also feels comfortable, and so that they all seamlessly blend together and they look like they all belong.
100%. I mean, again, we go back to the goal is to make your guests have an enjoyable time. So you just don't want to ask so much of them that that goes away in your theme. That's kind of like where the line should be drawn in the theme.
Absolutely. And you were talking a little bit about, like tablescapes and how you make everything look attractive. So let's talk about great tablescapes and like what is the first thing someone should do when they want to establish, okay, this is what I want my table to be.
Well, it's a little bit for me difficult to decide what I'm going to start with. And so like that's where a theme comes in handy is my theme might just be a color scheme or it might be um I'm going to host a lady from Italy who's coming to Dallas next week. And so I'm thinking I want things to have a little bit of an Italian flavor, but also a little bit of a Texan flavor because she's coming from so far away. I want to, combine the two. But it's not an obvious theme or an outright theme. It's just two things I'm keeping in mind as I make my choices. But when I'm starting to set my table, I think of something like that, but then I also find like a very tangible object to start with helps me make the rest of my choices. Sometimes it might be that I want to use a particular pair of candlesticks, or maybe it's that for example, this upcoming dinner, I'm having 14 people at my table, and I only have one china pattern that I can do 14 people with for several courses. So, that really dictates for me where I'm starting and what I'm using. Sometimes it's that I really want to use a certain terrain in the middle of the table, and every choice gets made off of that object. So I just like to find something very tangible that I can make just one thing that I can make the rest of my choices from.
That's fantastic. And I like that you said, I only have one pattern for this many people. So that's
Yes,
what I'm going to use. I'm not going to go reinvent the wheel or anything. I'm going to take what I have. I'm going to use that and allow the ideas to flow from that so you don't get overwhelmed.
right. And it can be overwhelming, especially if you're creative. It can be like, oh, I want to do this, I want to do this, I want to do this. And so anyway, yes, it can be a little overwhelming. So just embracing that one thing and then making your choices from there is really fun. And then remembering that this is not the last time you're going to do this. So these other ideas that pop into your head, jot them down, use them the next time. I'm a really big note taker when I entertain at home. I really like to record what I use to set the table through photography. And then I like to record who was there, what my seating chart was for those guests, and what I served. And I just like that because when I go back, it kind of inspires me what worked, what didn't, what I should do again, what I don't want to do again. It helps me take all of the ideas that I have and kind of harness them in, lasso them in, and make them easier to execute again the next time.
Such great advice. Taking notes so that you can think about what you did previous times and use them again next time to either avoid repeating or taking what you loved that worked really well and doing it with a new twist to make it fresh for guests.
Absolutely. I have a very old-fashioned entertaining journal that has a layout with notes, a place to write your menu, and it even has um, like a chart of a table so you can just sit there and write in like where everybody sat, and it's very helpful.
I love that. I love that. And, we're about up on time today. So I always like to end with a question like this, and I know you'll give a great answer. And that is, what is one thing all great event or party hosts have in common?
Gosh, all party hosts, what do they have in common? I would say that they have a smile and they have that genuine desire to shower their guests and gift their guests with a great, memorable, joyful, fun experience.
Joy and fun is what great events are all about, and you leave with that feeling that you can't wait for the next invitation from that person. So what a great what a great note to end on. So Kimberly, thank you so much for joining us today. This was just an absolute pleasure, and I'm so glad we got to do this.
Rob, it's so great to get to visit with you, and I can't wait till the next time. Thank you so much for having me on your amazing podcast. I'm so happy that you're bringing this topic to so easily to so many people who listen in, and I'm honored, honored, honored to be a part of it.
Well, we were honored to have you. And for more information on Kimberly Schlegel Whitman or to purchase any of her books or visit her brand, visit trunkcurated.com. And that will do it for this episode of Fun and Fundraising. I'm your host, Rob Giardinelli, reminding you to keep it fun, keep it interesting, and your guests will have a great time. Have a great day, everyone, and take care.